Imagine this. You've left everything, your home, your family, your future, to follow God's call. You move across the country to Kansas City, a city suddenly branded as the new epicenter of revival. You join a movement that promises 24-hour prayer until Jesus returns. A man named Mike Bickle tells you God has chosen this house of prayer to change history. But decades later, the movement you believed in is shattered by accusations that its founder used the very language of prophecy and intimacy with God to groom, manipulate, and exploit. This isn't just a story about one fallen leader. It's about how an entire system built on secrecy, blind loyalty, and unchecked authority enabled him for decades. Welcome to the rise and fall of Mike Bickle and the International House of Prayer, Kansas City, also known as IHOPKC. Mike Bickle wasn't just another local pastor. By the late 1980s, he was positioning himself as part of a prophetic wave sweeping through the charismatic church. He became associated with the infamous Kansas City Prophets, a group of men who claimed to hear directly from God through visions, dreams, and supernatural encounters. They included controversial figures like Bob Jones and Paul Cain, both of whom were later disgraced for sexual misconduct. Yet in that moment, they represented something fresh, something radical. To a generation hungry for signs and wonders, Mike Bickle wasn't just a pastor. He was a man with a pipeline straight to heaven. Then came his boldest move yet. In 1999, he founded the International House of Prayer, Kansas City. Its mission was unprecedented. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, worship and prayer would never stop. It was marketed as the heartbeat of revival. Young people flocked from around the world, drawn by the vision of living sacrificially for the return of Christ. IHOPKC wasn't just a church, it was a global movement. But while thousands prayed in the glass-walled prayer room behind closed doors, another story was unfolding. Even during IHOPKC's glory days, whispers followed Mike Bickle. Former members recall unusual private meetings where he invited young women to his office or to secluded mentoring sessions. These weren't ordinary counseling conversations. Survivors say Bickle used spiritualized language that blurred the line between devotion to Christ and personal devotion to him. Talks about intimacy with Jesus would gradually morph into discussions of emotional and even physical intimacy with Bickle himself. And because of who he was, the prophet, the man of God, few dared question him. Some leaders saw troubling patterns, but when they tried to raise concerns, they were met with silence. Or worse, rebuke. IHOP's leadership culture demanded loyalty above all. Questioning Mike Bickle wasn't just insubordination, it was spiritual rebellion. And so, a dangerous foundation was laid, a culture where grooming could thrive under the cover of spiritual mentorship. Survivors later described Bickle's tactics as almost textbook grooming, except dressed up in prophetic clothing. Step 1. Special favor. Bickle singled them out, framing their closeness as God's design. He told them their connection was divinely orchestrated. Step 2. Spiritualization. He'd claim God had revealed their relationship as part of a heavenly plan, using his prophetic authority to override doubts. Step 3. Blurring the lines. Over time, conversations about intimacy with Christ shifted to intimacy with him. What started as mentoring ended in manipulation. By the time victims realized what was happening, they were already spiritually trapped. To resist Mike wasn't just to say no to a man. It felt like saying no to God himself. That's the devastating power of spiritual grooming. But this story isn't only about Mike Bickle. It's about the environment that allowed him to operate unchecked for decades. Inside IHOPKC, loyalty to leadership was preached as obedience to God. Criticism was equated with rebellion, and secrecy was normalized. The mantra was familiar. Don't touch the Lord's anointed. Those who asked questions were told they didn't understand spiritual authority. Survivors who spoke out were pressured into silence, reminded that exposing Bickle could damage the ministry, the prayer movement, even God's reputation. The result? A culture of silence that prioritized protecting the prophet over protecting the vulnerable. Meanwhile, IHOPKC's public face only grew brighter. Conferences packed stadiums. Worship albums reached millions. Mike Bickle became a spiritual father to thousands. But beneath the stage lights and worship songs, cracks were forming. On October 28, 2023, the whispers became headlines. News broke that Mike Bickle faced allegations of sexual assault from women spanning decades. The next day, IHOPKC announced that Bickle had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. They contracted the national law firm Stinson LLP to lead the probe. But after sharp criticism that Stinson had conflicts of interest, they shifted the investigation to a local Kansas City firm. It was only the beginning. On November 30th, 2023, Jane Doe came forward, alleging that Bickle had SA'd her from 1996 to 1999, beginning when she was just 19 years old and he was 42. Then, on December 12th, 2023, Bickle himself confessed to what he called past misconduct, while denying some of the allegations. 10 days later, IHOPKC publicly admitted that their internal investigation had confirmed Bickle's inappropriate behavior. They announced that ties were being immediately and permanently severed. But the story was far from over. On February 7th, 2024, the Kansas City Star published the first detailed account of SA from a survivor named Tammy Woods. She described how Bickle began grooming and SAing her in the 1980s when she was just 14 years old. He was in his mid-20s. Her testimony was corroborated by family members and friends. She explained why she had stayed silent for decades and revealed that Bickle had even attempted to contact her after the 2023 allegations broke in what she perceived as an attempt to manage or manipulate her story. Then came the most damning revelation yet. On February 3, 2025, Tikkun Global, a messianic Jewish group assisting with the independent investigation, released a shocking report. 17 individuals had come forward, reporting SA, misconduct, or spiritual abuse by Mike Bickle, stretching all the way back to the mid-1970s. Some were adults, some were minors. The testimonies included grooming, manipulation, coercion, and rape. The picture was clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a decades-long pattern. By March 2025, survivors, including Tammy Woods, were testifying before Missouri lawmakers. They advocated for legislation to abolish the statute of limitations for CSA cases and to ban non-disclosure agreements that silence victims. Their voices carried weight. Just 3 months later, in June 2025, the state passed Trey's Law, named after another survivor of abuse, ensuring that no victim would ever again be silenced by legal loopholes or gag orders. What began as whispers had now reshaped the law itself. These testimonies revealed not only Bickle's misconduct, but also how deeply the system had failed. Former insiders said IHOPKC leadership had been aware of troubling behavior for years. Instead of intervening, they protected their leader, suppressed questions, and discouraged survivors from coming forward. In the end, the scandal wasn't just about one man's actions. It was about an entire culture that allowed ABUSA to remain hidden under the guise of spirituality. A culture that chose image over truth. The fallout was swift and devastating. Former members began speaking out in droves, sharing stories of manipulation, spiritual abuse, and toxic culture at IHOPKC. Donors pulled away, partnerships collapsed, and the once unshakable reputation of the House of Prayer crumbled overnight. The glass-walled prayer room, once a symbol of perpetual worship, became a symbol of hypocrisy. To many, IHOPKC no longer represented revival. It represented betrayal. This scandal forces the church to confront some uncomfortable truths. Why do so many Christian movements place unaccountable authority in the hands of a single charismatic leader? How can spiritual language, visions, prophecies, intimacy with Jesus be twisted into tools of exploitation? And why, time and again, do churches silence victims in the name of protecting God's work? These questions go far beyond IHOPKC. They cut to the heart of how modern Christianity handles power, accountability, and a BUSE. Mike Bickle's downfall is more than a personal tragedy. It's a cautionary tale. It reminds us that charisma is not a substitute for character, that spiritual gifts do not replace integrity, and that no one, no matter how anointed they appear, is above accountability. Movements built on secrecy and blind loyalty will always collapse because true holiness cannot coexist with hidden ABUSE. And when the church fails to hold its leaders accountable, it isn't just leaders who fall, it's entire generations of believers left disillusioned. For the survivors who found the courage to speak, this story is about more than exposing one man's darkness. It's about reclaiming their voices. It's about refusing to stay silent any longer. The International House of Prayer was supposed to be a light to the nations. Instead, it now stands as a warning. When power is unchecked, when accountability is absent, and when truth is buried, even the most spiritual movements can become the most dangerous. So I ask you, the anointed ones watching right now, was this the failure of one man? Or was it the inevitable collapse of a system built on blind trust? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because in the end, the story of Mike Bickle and IHOP KC is not just their story. It's a mirror held up to the church. And the question we all have to answer is this: will we learn from it or repeat it?